Ladies and gentlemen, stop what you're doing. Because the streets of Harlem are on fire, and the internet is losing its collective mind. Picture this: Jim Jones, Dipset legend, longtime hustler turned reality star, is scrolling on his phone, chilling like any other Sunday night when suddenly, boom, his whole world flips upside down. A grainy, dimly lit video drops out of nowhere, and who's in it? None other than Chrissy Lampkin, his ride or die, the woman he's been holding down for years, sitting way too close, way too cozy. With the one person Jim should never have to worry about, Camron. Yeah, that Camron, the pink mink king himself. Now, I know what you're thinking, come on, this has gotta be some clickbait nonsense. But oh no, my friends, this ain't just gossip. This ain't just rumor. This is the kind of scandal that makes Twitter implode. TikTok detectives pull out the slow-motion zooms, and Instagram comment sections turn into a digital boxing ring. And speaking of boxing, when Jim saw the footage, he didn't just tweet about it, he went full WWE. Word is, he stormed into Cam's studio and swung before anyone could blink. Fists flying, chairs crashing, egos bruised, and yes, someone caught the whole thing on camera. So the question is, betrayal or misunderstanding? Brotherly love gone sour or the ultimate Harlem backstab? One thing's for sure, this is about to get messy. Real messy. And I've got all the tea. Stay right here. Asterisk, it all began with one blurry clip that should have never seen the light of day, but in the world we live in now, one shaky camera phone is all it takes to set the internet on fire and destroy years of loyalty in a single instant. And that is exactly what happened when a short video started circulating showing Chrissy Lampkin, the longtime partner of Harlem rapper Jim Jones, sitting far too comfortably close to none other than Camron, a man who was supposed to be like family to Jim. And the footage was not just innocent background laughter or casual friends hanging out. The body language spoke volumes as Chrissy leaned in with her hand grazing Cam's leg while Cam whispered something in her ear that made her light up in a smile that fans had not seen in years. And just when she thought nobody was watching, her hand rested on his chest for a second too long, and that was enough to send the entire culture into a frenzy, because this was not just any scandal, it was a Dipset implosion in the making. And the timing could not have been worse, because Jim Jones had been building his image of loyalty and partnership with Chrissy for over a decade. And now that trust was being shattered by the very man who had shared stages and brotherhood with him since their youth. And once that video dropped, there was no going back, because in less than an hour, it was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and every single gossip blog had their hands on it, and the title of the clip was explosive: Chrissy caught on camera with Camron. And that headline was enough to ignite memes, hashtags, and wild theories in every corner of the internet. Insiders close to Jim said he was at home scrolling through his feed when the video appeared, and at first he froze, staring at the screen in disbelief, replaying it multiple times before the rage took over and he hurled his phone across the room, disappearing into the Harlem night without saying a single word to anyone. And when he finally returned hours later, his face was pale and his eyes bloodshot, like a man who had aged years in one evening. And according to those around him, he did not just feel betrayed, he felt humiliated, because this was not some faceless rumor spread by jealous fans. This was video evidence of his partner and his brother in arms, looking far too close for comfort. And once the streets began talking, he could not ignore it, because Harlem is not a place where whispers stay. Whispers, they turn into roars overnight, and this roar was echoing across the entire culture. Social media became a battlefield almost instantly, with Twitter detectives digging up old footage from Love and Hip Hop, where Chrissy and Cam shared light banter that now seemed suspiciously loaded, and Instagram commenters turning the leaked clip into countless memes comparing Jim to every man who ever got betrayed, while TikTok creators slowed the footage frame by frame, analyzing every glance, every smile, every touch, and concluding that the chemistry was undeniable. And whether people wanted to believe it or not, Chrissy and Cam were hiding something that was now exposed for the world to see. Jim's anger only grew when Cam refused to pick up his calls or respond to his messages, choosing instead to go quiet online, except for one sarcastic reply to a fan where he wrote, Jim, acting like I stole his girl, which only fueled the narrative that Cam was mocking the entire situation and treating Jim's pain as entertainment. And that was the exact moment Jim snapped, because insiders say it was no longer about Chrissy, it was about Cam, about betrayal between brothers, about respect, about Harlem pride. And in Jim's mind, Cam had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Meanwhile, Chrissy herself remained silent, which only poured more gasoline on the fire, because fans were demanding answers in every minute. She stayed quiet. The speculation grew louder, with many accusing her of hiding the truth while others defended her, saying maybe the footage was misleading, maybe she was caught in a bad angle. But then the second video leaked, and that one was clearer, brighter, and even longer, showing not only Chrissy and Cam sitting close, but their hands clasped together under the table as they shared private laughter that could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. And at the end of that clip, Chrissy leaned in to whisper something in Cam's ear while he nodded with a slow, knowing smile that confirmed what everyone feared. And when that footage hit the internet, the meltdown was total, because now it was not suspicion, it was confirmation, and the betrayal narrative could no longer be denied. Reports say when Jim saw the second video, he did not even flinch this time. He was already numb, as if the knife had already been twisted and there was nothing left to break inside him, and instead of reacting with rage, he simply sat down in the studio, turned off his phone, and poured his pain into the booth, spitting lines that were darker, more venomous than anything he had released before. Talking about backstabbers, smiling in your face, and warning not to trust even the ones you share your bed with. And fans who heard the snippets later said it was clear Jim was bleeding through his music in a way that felt more raw and real than ever before. But while Jim retreated into his music, Cam decided to play it off, posting a video of himself laughing with friends, saying people should not believe everything they see online, brushing the scandal off as if it were nothing but the bruises on his jaw told another story. And the fans were not buying it, flooding his comments with clown emojis and snake symbols, calling him out for breaking the code of brotherhood and treating Jim like a fool. And through it all, Chrissy remained silent, trapped between her guilt and her fear, as she avoided the spotlight completely, which only made her look more suspicious in the eyes of the public. And by this point, the story had spiraled so far beyond the original clip that it was no longer just a scandal. It was a cultural moment, a viral wildfire, consuming everyone involved and leaving nothing but suspicion, betrayal, and broken bonds in its wake. The scandal did not cool down after the second video. In fact, it only grew hotter and more uncontrollable, because what began as a messy leak had transformed into a full-blown cultural crisis, where everyone from gossip bloggers to mainstream outlets were dissecting every angle and offering theories about what would happen next. And if Jim Jones had tried to retreat into his music to find some sort of escape, that door quickly slammed shut when the media began circling him like vultures, chasing quotes and sound bites for their headlines. And everywhere he turned there were cameras, microphones, and questions about whether Chrissy really betrayed him, and whether his brotherhood with Cam was truly finished. And in Harlem, the streets were buzzing like a hive, with people taking sides, whispering in barbershops and street corners about how Jim had been played in front of the whole world, and how Cam had disrespected the code of family to a level that could never be forgiven. And even those who did not care about the music or the history were captivated by the drama, because it was raw human betrayal unfolding in real time, and the internet was serving it up like an endless buffet of chaos. Anonymous insiders began leaking supposed details about what happened behind closed doors, claiming Jim had confronted Chrissy in a heated argument that ended with her storming out of their shared home, while others swore they had overheard Cam bragging in a private studio session about having the upper hand on Jim. And these unverified whispers only fueled the fire, because fans love nothing more than conspiracy and speculation, and in this case they had enough fuel to keep burning for months. The memes became crueler, the edits harsher, with clips of Jim crying in earlier seasons of Love and Hip Hop being repurposed as jokes, while people added captions mocking his heartbreak. And though some sympathized with him, the larger crowd treated it like a circus, cheering on every messy twist as if it were scripted entertainment, instead of real human lives unraveling before millions of eyes. Reports then surfaced that Jim had actually pulled up on Cam in person at his studio late one night, demanding answers, and when Cam laughed it off and called it a misunderstanding, Jim allegedly lost control, and fists started flying. And before anyone could break it up, chairs were knocked over, glass was shattered, and both men walked away bruised and battered. Not just physically, but in their pride and their bond. That fight only made things worse once the footage leaked, because someone in the studio had recorded the scuffle on their phone and sold it to a gossip outlet that published it with the headline "Jim Jones attacks Camron over Chrissy betrayal." And once again the internet erupted, this time with video proof of the fallout. And this was no longer about speculation, it was about Harlem brothers turned enemies brawling like strangers on a street corner, and the damage to their legacy was severe. Fans who once celebrated Dipset as the symbol of unity and Harlem strength now ridiculed them as clowns tearing each other down in public, and younger generations who barely remembered the golden era mocked them for being washed-up rappers fighting over a woman instead of focusing on their craft. And the ridicule cut deep into Jim because he had always prided himself on respect and loyalty, and now he was being portrayed as weak and humiliated in front of the world, while Cam seemed to bask in the attention, using the controversy to boost his streams and online relevance. Chrissy's silence only deepened the wound, because each day she refused to speak was another day the public filled in the blanks with their own narratives, painting her as manipulative, cunning, and disloyal, while some fans tried to defend her, saying she was being crucified without proof. Yet the second video had already been burned into everyone's minds as undeniable evidence, and the silence only felt like an admission of guilt. Rumors then began swirling that Chrissy had moved out temporarily, staying at a private condo paid for by a mysterious benefactor, which of course people assumed was Cam, and whether it was true or not did not matter, because perception had already replaced reality in the eyes of the public, and perception was that Jim had lost everything at once: his partner, his brother, and his dignity. Industry insiders also began chiming in with speculation that this scandal could ruin business deals for Jim, because brands do not want to be tied to chaos, and while some said he could spin the heartbreak into a comeback album, others warned that the humiliation might overshadow his music entirely, because people were no longer listening to his tracks, they were laughing at his pain, and in the ruthless cycle of internet culture that mockery could be career-ending. Meanwhile, Cam seemed to lean into the villain role, posting cryptic pictures in pink furs with captions about loyalty being overrated and making jokes that only inflamed the narrative further, while refusing to offer any serious denial, and that smug energy painted him as the ultimate snake in the grass, which ironically only boosted his visibility, because controversy always feeds attention, and he was thriving in the chaos that was crushing Jim. By now fans were openly calling for Jim to leave Chrissy for good, to cut ties with Cam forever, and to reclaim his pride by focusing on his career, instead of wallowing in public betrayal. But others whispered that it was already too late, because once your humiliation becomes a meme, it never goes away, it lives forever, online, replayed, mocked, and dissected endlessly. In Harlem, elders who had known both men from their early days shook their heads in disappointment, saying that this was the saddest chapter in Dipset history, a brotherhood that had represented strength and unity now collapsing into public warfare over whispers of betrayal. And the tragic irony was that the more people tried to spin narratives, the less anyone actually knew for certain, because the only ones with the truth were Jim, Chrissy, and Cam, and all three of them were locked in silence or pettiness, leaving the public to consume only the chaos and nothing else. And in that silence the scandal kept growing, mutating from gossip into legend, a cautionary tale about loyalty, fame, and betrayal in the digital age, where every slip, every fight, every intimate moment can be captured, replayed, and weaponized against you until it no longer feels like real life, but a never-ending show where the audience is entertained while the players bleed in real time. The longer the silence dragged on, the more dangerous the situation became, because what had started as a scandal in the world of entertainment was now being whispered about as a matter of safety and loyalty gone wrong, with some insiders even claiming that certain Harlem crews were picking sides and preparing for retaliation, as if this personal betrayal had escalated into a street-level war. And while that might have been exaggerated, it reflected the intensity with which people were consuming the drama and treating it as something bigger than just three individuals caught in a messy triangle. And the whispers of violence only amplified the fear that this was no longer just gossip, but a real-life tragedy waiting to happen. Jim Jones was said to be torn between two states of mind: one moment wanting to cut everyone off and retreat into isolation, and the next wanting to make an example out of both Chrissy and Cam, to restore the respect he felt slipping through his fingers. And those close to him described him pacing back and forth at night, unable to sleep, mumbling about betrayal and how the world was laughing at him, and that weight was crushing for a man who had built his entire persona on loyalty, pride, and Harlem toughness. Chrissy, meanwhile, was spotted once in public wearing dark glasses and moving quickly into a car, refusing to answer questions from paparazzi who shouted at her asking if she loved Cam and whether Jim still had a place in her life, and that single sighting only made the hunger for answers grow more feral, as blogs published grainy images and claimed she looked guilty and broken, and some even speculated that she was already planning to leave Jim for good. Cam, on the other hand, doubled down on his smug posture, appearing in a live stream with friends where he laughed about betrayal stories, playing Future's music in the background as if mocking the entire scandal. And that live stream was clipped and reposted thousands of times, with fans split between finding it hilarious and finding it disgusting that he could joke while his so-called brother was being humiliated before millions. As if the situation needed more gasoline, an alleged audio recording leaked where a voice that sounded like Chrissy was heard arguing with Jim, saying he never gave her the attention she needed, and that Cam understood her in ways Jim never could. And whether the audio was real or fake did not matter because the internet treated it as genuine evidence, and the narrative solidified further that Chrissy had chosen Cam emotionally, if not physically, long before the video ever surfaced, and that revelation was like the final dagger twisting into Jim's side. Industry executives began weighing in with concerns that this public collapse was bad for business, with whispers that certain brands were pulling back from partnerships, with Jim fearing the negativity around his name, while ironically, Cam's streaming numbers and merchandise sales were rising as controversy made him more relevant than he had been in years, and that imbalance only deepened the humiliation, because it felt like betrayal was being rewarded and loyalty was being punished. In the cruel spotlight of the internet, friends of Jim urged him to focus on his craft, to channel the pain into a legendary project that could flip the narrative. But even as he tried to record, insiders said his voice carried the weight of someone on the edge of collapse, and more than once he broke down mid-verse, unable to finish his bars because the emotions were simply too raw to contain. Fans continued to argue online, with some insisting Chrissy deserved to be cut off completely, while others pleaded for understanding, saying maybe she was confused and lonely. But as days turned into weeks, the silence from Chrissy hardened into something that looked less like confusion and more like acceptance of her choice, and that made Jim appear even more abandoned in the eyes of the public. By the time rumors began swirling that legal representatives were getting involved to discuss separation of assets between Jim and Chrissy, the scandal had reached its peak, turning into the kind of public implosion that reality television producers dream of and gossip consumers never forget. And though no official statements were made, the constant speculation created its own reality, one where Jim was painted as the tragic figure betrayed by both love and loyalty, one where Chrissy was painted as the unfaithful partner who broke the code, and one where Cam was painted as the villain who smiled through the destruction of a brotherhood. And through it all, the world kept watching, replaying the clips, analyzing every rumor spreading, every meme, until the story was no longer just about a man, a woman, and a brother. It was about fame, pride, betrayal, and the price of living under the unblinking eye of a culture that never forgets and never forgives. So now the question is, where does it all go from here? Because we have watched loyalty crumble, we have seen brotherhood burn, and we have witnessed a love story turn into a viral nightmare, and all of it has played out in front of our eyes, with the world cheering, clapping, and laughing at every new twist. But the truth is, this story is far from over, and it is you, the audience, that holds the power to keep the conversation alive. So tell me, do you believe Chrissy really betrayed Jim, or was she caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Do you think Cam has crossed a line so deep that there is no way back, or is this just another chapter in the twisted soap opera of Harlem? Legends trying to outshine each other, and more importantly, do you think Jim will rise from this humiliation stronger than ever, or will he fade into the shadows carrying the scars of betrayal forever? I want to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you want the truth exposed even deeper, and subscribe right now because the next revelation could change everything.